Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we've got something a bit different for us. A single source, but a really powerful one. This piece called The Ballad of the Emptiness.
Yeah.
And our mission really is to go beyond just, reading it as poetry. We want to treat these verses almost like a map of a profound internal state. We're going to try and unpack the emotions, the sensory overload, and figure out what's driving this really mysterious, fleeting connection that seems to, define the narrator's whole world.
Exactly. And even though it's written lyrically, poetically, the level of specific detail in there is quite striking. It's not just vague feelings. There's a clear pattern.
Yeah.
Conditions for arrival, a whole catalog of sensations.
Right.
And this deep philosophical puzzle running through it. So our focus, I think, has to be on understanding this connection, why it seems to need absence, and how that absence, weirdly enough, is presented as making it eternal.
Okay, let's start there then. Part one, the conditions. When does this visit happen? The text is very clear. It needs absolute quiet, doesn't it?
Utter stillness.
In the silence of night, it says. And in the hour when the world forgets to breathe. That's quite a line.
It really is. It implies a kind of total stasis. The outside world has to be completely shut down. But it's not just the world, it's the narrator, too. When sleep folds me in its quiet wings.
So it requires passivity from the narrator as well.
Complete passivity, it seems. This strongly suggests the whole experience happens in that fuzzy state, between being fully awake and fully asleep. A liminal space where normal reality doesn't quite apply.
And right away we get that central mystery laid out. I do not know who you are, yet you come. So the connection exists entirely without any identifying information. No name, no origin.
None. And what's really fascinating is how fragile that connection is. The moment the real world, or even just conscious intent, comes back online, poof, it's gone.
Yeah, the departure is immediate. But when I wake to greet the dawn, you fade away and disappear. It's not a slow drift back to reality.
No, not at all. It vanishes. And it gets even more specific, doesn't it? The frustration is palpable.
You mean the part about trying to name the visitor?
Exactly. The narrator tries the most basic act of recognition, of bringing this presence into the conscious world.
Yeah.
I open my eyes to call your name.
And you vanish before I begin. Just the intention is enough to break it.
Precisely. It hammers home that this relationship, whatever it is, fundamentally depends on staying undefined, unnamed, existing only in that non-waking, non-defined state.
Which is so strange because for something that shatters so easily, the experience itself is described as incredibly intense, almost overwhelmingly sensory.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where, like you said, it really becomes a map of an internal landscape. It hits almost all the senses, despite having no, physical basis in reality.
Okay, let's get into that. Part two, the sensory catalog. Where should we start?
Maybe with smell. It seems quite dominant. The aura changes, the air turns sweet, and then that very specific detail. The trembling scent of jasmine flows.
Jasmine. Why jasmine, do you think? Any significance there?
Well, jasmine is famous for its scent being strongest at night, right? So it reinforces that nocturnal setting, that time when the world is asleep. And it flows. It's not just a faint smell, it's depicted as filling the space.
Okay, makes sense. So smell sets the scene. What about touch?
Touch is interesting because it uses these really strong contrasts. On one hand, intense heat, your touch of fire. Powerful, maybe even painful, but then immediately contrasted with something incredibly soft and ephemeral. Your shadow melts upon my skin.
Fire and melting shadows. So it's both incredibly potent and utterly intangible at the same time.
Exactly. It highlights the contradictory nature of this non-physical intimacy. It feels real, incredibly real, but it follows none of the rules of physical touch.
And sound. Is there a voice?
Sort of, but again, it's very gentle, very atmospheric. Your whispered words like fallen dew, precious, delicate but fleeting.
Like dew evaporating at dawn.
Precisely. And then those sighs drift softly by my ear like honeyed winds that brush the sea. It's all incredibly soft, almost like background noise, but deeply felt. It's more like the memory of sound than an actual conversation.
Right, not a dialogue. More like an auditory sensation.
And finally, there's even taste mentioned explicitly. A sacred sweetness fills my lips. Pulling all these threads together, the jasmine, the fire, the shadow, the dew-like words, the sweetness, it paints a picture of an experience that for that brief time feels incredibly complete, maybe even more real than waking life.
Which explains why its loss is so keenly felt. And the poem connects this directly to healing, doesn't it? It says, this presence heals the ache my heart still knows.
Yes, so the visit isn't just about sensation. It serves a vital emotional function. It's a temporary fix, a balm for some underlying sorrow. But of course, the fix doesn't last. Dawn comes, the presence vanishes, and presumably the ache returns.
The body remembers the experience, but the conscious mind is left with, well, emptiness.
Exactly. Which brings us neatly to part 3. The mystery, the sorrow, and how this emptiness becomes permanent in a way. The core issue is ignorance, isn't it?
Yeah, the narrator explicitly states they don't know the who or the why. I do not know from where you came, nor why your spirit clings to mine. Total lack of understanding.
And this constant remembering, this burning memory of something lost, keeps the narrator awake. Through sleepless nights, your memory burns. The sweetness lingers, but so does the loss.
So the memory itself becomes a source of pain.
It seems so. But the source suggests something deeper. That the pain, the sorrow, is actually linked to creation. It's the mechanism through which the experience is recorded.
Oh, so?
Look at the lines. Tears carve verses on my soul. Each drop of sorrow writes your name, on pages I can't control. The sorrow isn't just felt, it actively creates. The tears become the ink. The soul becomes the page.
Wow. So the pain is the process of writing the ballad itself. The inability to hold on to the presence forces the act of remembrance, of writing it down.
It seems that way. The narrator is almost passive in the creation. The sorrow does the writing. The impossibility of the love fuels the poetry that describes it.
That's quite a thought. So if the experience is defined by the cycle of fleeting connection, intense memory, and sorrowful creation, how does the narrator arrive at the end, that final acceptance? It seems like a huge leap from constant pain to saying, loneliness becomes my friend.
It is a leap, but it's the philosophical heart of the ballad, I think. It's where the narrator figures out the paradox. They realize that this love, to exist at all, must exist in this state of emptiness.
What do you mean?
Well, think about it. If the visitor were real, physically present, known, they'd be subject to time, change, loss, all the usual rules of reality. The relationship could end, fade, disappoint.
Okay.
But by existing only in absence in the memory, in the dream, in the verses born from sorrow, it becomes untouchable. It can't be truly lost because it was never truly had in a conventional sense.
Ah, I see. So accepting the loneliness, accepting the emptiness is the key to preserving the love.
That seems to be the conclusion. The emptiness isn't a void. It's the condition required for this specific kind of love to be permanent.
Yeah.
Which leads directly to that final powerful statement. For love that blooms in emptiness is love that never ends.
It's eternal because it's unreal, because it lives only in that internal space defined by its own absence from the waking world. Wow.
It's a profound twist, isn't it?
Yeah.
The very thing that causes the sorrow, the absence, is ultimately reframed as the source of the love's permanence.
So this deep dive really shows how the Ballad of the Emptiness uses these incredibly specific, vibrant sensory details, the jasmine, the fire, the dew, not just to describe a feeling, but to build a case for a love defined by its own impossibility. The narrator essentially trades real-world presence for a kind of internal immortality for the bond. It's beautiful, but also deeply paradoxical.
It absolutely is. And it leaves us with a really interesting question, I think, that builds right on what the source implies. We've established that the love is presented as eternal because it exists outside reality, outside knowledge. So the provocative thought might be, what if the narrator did find out? If they somehow learned the name, the origin, if they could call the name successfully, would that break the spell entirely? Would the love stop being the love that never ends, precisely because it had become known, become real?
Does the eternity depend entirely on that void of knowledge remaining unfilled? That's definitely something to chew on. Thank you for exploring that with us. A fascinating look at how absence can create presence and how ephemeral beauty might find a strange kind of permanence. We hope you take some of these ideas about elusive connection